Welcome to another episode of our programming. Now, in this episode, we're going to discuss about queues. Now, we're going to implement queues data structures. And first step that we're going to do is first create a class of queue. So the class is going to contain a constructor. And the constructor that we're going to call is a constructor of elements. And the elements that we're going to call is an array of elements. Now, with that said, let us look at our first method. Now, the first method that we're going to work on is enqueue. The enqueue method or onQueue that contains the elements that are going to pass through. Then we're going to initiate through the initialized constructor. We're going to push or add an element to the queue from one head. So adding an element, we're going to use the method push. So using the push method and you add the parameter element, you're going to add the new element in the queue. Now, our next example that we're going to method that we're going to look into is the dequeue method. Now, the dequeue method is used to remove an element from the queue. So, removing an element from the queue, we're going to return this element item. And the element item that we're going to return is the shift method. So the shift method is going to remove an element from the queue. Now, our next method that we're going to look into is empty method. Now, the empty method is used to return an element, rather is used to return the length of the element or the queue is equals to 0. So if the items in the queue is equals to 0, then the element is going to return an index of 0. So the empty method is mostly similar to the stack method. Now, our next method that we're going to look into is the pick method. The pick method is used to show the last element in the queue without removing it. So when you're using the pick method returns if the queue is empty, then return the items, the last item of the queue, of which the last item of the queue is always index 0. So you return if the last element is not empty, return this element item 0. Or else if it's empty, you return null value. Rather, we return a null data type. Now, our next method that we're going to implement is the size method. Now, the size method is simply going to return the size of the queue. So, the size of the queue is going to have a return value. So, the return value is going to be the size of the items dot length. So, this gives us the length of the array of the queue that has been returned. Now, our last method that we're going to look into is the print method. Now, print method is used to print out the elements present in a queue. Remember, we can use the toString value. You can use the toString method in the items array. With that, our queue data structure has been implemented in JavaScript. Now let us first instantiate our value to see if the queue is properly placed. Now first we're going to create our queue instance. And our first method that we're going to log is check if the queue is empty. So we are going to use the method is empty. And the if empty method is going to so we're going to confirm whether our queue is empty. By doing that, we're going to run our code and see if the queue is empty. So it has returned a true value which tells us that the queue is empty. Now, another method that we're going to look into first is the enqueue method. The enqueue method is used to put element in the queue. So we're going to add the first element that we're going to add in our array. So let us add the 10 value 10 element in the queue. Let us run the code and see if the value has been added to the queue. So yes, we have put the first element in the queue, and we are going to add the values in the queue. We're going to add the element 10. We're going to also add element 20. Then we had another element which is we enqueue another element that is 30. So to confirm if the values have been enqueued to the queue, we're going to log the queue size and see the size of the queue again. So we are going to run and see there's been added 3 values in the queue. So the queue size is going to give us the value 3 of the 3 elements that we have just enqueued. Those are 10, 20, and 30. Now, so after we get the value, the size of the queue, we're going again to call another method that is the print method. So the print method is going to string is going to print the number of rather is going to print the elements in the queue. So let us run the code and see the print method if it's effective. You can see the values that you've just enqueued, the value 10, 20, and 30, they have been printed on the console. Now, with that said, let us try to dequeue the queue. So we're going to log the queue method using the dequeue method. So after we have run our code, we see the first element in the queue, which is 10, has been dequeued from the list. So we're going to call another method that is the pick method, and we're going to identify the value of the first element in the queue. So we're going to use the pick method. When we call the pick method, let us see how it is going to behave. You see, it has given us the first value in the queue after the 10 value has been dequeued from the list. So the pick method is going to show us the first element in the queue after you've decoded. So that's all to confirm whether our class queue is working correctly, and the methods and the attributes are as well working correctly. So that was a brief introduction to our queue data structures. I'll see you in the next episode where we're going to discuss further about the queues. Please remember to subscribe and share, and I hope to see you in the next episode.